Okay, today's lesson is the first lesson in our new unit, Classical Societies in Afro-Eurasia. If that term, Afro-Eurasia, sounds familiar, it's because we've already learned about it a little bit in this class, but we were looking at more ancient times, and in this era, we're looking at the classical societies, so really like after the year 0. And as a reminder, Afro-Eurasia is just the combination of the areas that are located in Africa, Europe, and Asia. Okay, so your lesson's a little bit different than what I'm doing with my traditional e-learners at school. So I am going to post an activity or a video of the activity that they're doing for this slide. So again, it's a little bit different. I'm going to put the video on Canvas or link it maybe if I can figure out how to do that here, but it's going to be an activity. You guys can't really do it online, so anyway, we're going to look at labor forces in 3 different empires or dynasties. So the Roman Empire's labor force, the Han Dynasty's labor force, and then the Persian Empire's labor force. We're looking at these 3 because they are different from each other, and I want to get like a holistic view of what these different labor forces look like. So for example, in Rome, the labor force was made up of both free peasants who had to work and earn money to make a living, and slaves who didn't earn money when they worked, right? The Han Dynasty is an example of a labor force that was made up entirely of free people, and then the Persian Empire is a labor force that's made up of mostly slaves. So I want you to think, and this is on your worksheet, so hopefully you're following along. In real life, which labor force would likely produce the most products? So of those 3, do you think it's a labor force of just slaves, a labor force of just free people, or a labor force of combined? And then tell me why you think that. This source, or this image, is an example of the Indian caste system, right? And it shows that the Brahmin are at the top and it goes down, right? And it explains who belongs in each class system, or really they call it caste. So at the top, they consider the priests or the people who are scholars, like academics, to be the highest. Under that are your warriors or your kings. Under that are your merchants and your landowners. Under that are your commoners, peasants, and servants. And then on the bottom is what we call untouchables, or what they called it. I think they legally ruled that term to be like not to be used anymore, but those are people who are considered to be outcast, and it's because like the duties that they do are unpure to their beliefs, right? So these are people who, not just really street sweepers, but latrine cleaners, people who that touch, they said, like any kind of like feces or anything that is yucky, but not only just dirty but unpure. Dead animals, for example. So if you like haul away dead animals, stuff like that, you're considered to be that bottom caste. The Roman class system, we can also kind of put in like a little pyramid. So this one has patricians at the top. So these are your wealthy landowners, your ruling class, your senators, any descendants of the founding fathers, etc. The next one has poor, small farm owners. They have little rights, no veto power, no say in their government. Below that, it just has freedmen. So those are like released slaves freed by their owners. They have also very little rights. They're typically craftsmen or traders. And then at the bottom, you have slaves. So I put those 2 pyramids on your worksheet. I understand that the second one can be a little difficult to read. So if you need to pause and go back to look at it on the PowerPoint, like in the video, you can, but I want you to answer questions 2 and 3. So what are some similarities and some differences you see between those 2 systems? When you're done with that, when you've looked at those pyramids and answered number 2, then we'll move on to number 3. And if you were to make a labor system for the United States, what would it look like? So I'm being kind of vague here. So fill it out, that pyramid that's blank on your worksheet, just how your perception of the United States labor force is, okay? So there's lots of different ways you can do that. Any of them are okay. Just get it done. Okay, so let's kind of look at how we view our labor force as a society. So looking at the second triangle, there's 2, right? So, or pyramid, so if you turn your sheet over, or if you're on the computer, if you scroll down, where would you put an electrician, right? Which of those like classes would you put an electrician in? What about a teacher? So I want you to just jot these names down in that second pyramid, that second class system we're looking at, class structure? What about a fast food worker? Where would they go? What about a politician? And I'm showing you Ron DeSantis because he's our governor of Florida, but just politicians in general, you can do like, how do you view which class they go in? What about a police officer? This opinion is going to vary greatly, right, from person to person, from culture to culture. What about a soldier? How do we view soldiers? A financial planner, like a banker, someone in the finance industry, where would you put them? What about a doctor? Where would a doctor go? What about a waste collector, which is the politically correct name for a garbage man? Where would you put that? What about a professional athlete? You know, Patriots trying to replace Tom Brady. Not doing it, but, you know, I can try. What about a YouTuber? And I don't know if you know, but this is the most famous, or actually, I don't know if he's the most famous, but the highest earned income YouTuber of 2020. His name is Ryan, and I think he's like 9. So we can all go cry now. So once you get all of this down, we'll move on. Okay, so before I start this slide, I want you to think like why did you choose to put these professions where you put them on the pyramid? Was it based on like your perception of like how you view the value of their job, right? Like, was it like, oh, well, those are honorable, or that is a hard job? Was it based on skill, or was it based on income, right? Because I think naturally in America, we value income almost more than anything else, really. Like, that's how we like judge whether a person is successful or not. Where they go in the class system is based on how much money they make, a lot of the time, not always, right? So I want to look at these professions that we just looked at. I want to look at their average income in the United States. And as we look at it, does it kind of fall in line with, did you put them in class based on like what you think their income is, right? So for example, an electrician makes in the United States on average 38 to 63,000, depending on where in your career you're at, right? So an electrician who's been an electrician for 2 years is going to be on the lower end. If you've been doing it for 20 years, you're going to be on the higher end, right? A teacher makes $61,000, and I put a little laughy face because definitely not in Florida. We start real low. Florida's teachers are underpaid, so I'm just going to toss that one out there. But where on that pyramid do you see them falling? Am I in the bottom? What about a fast food worker? They make $18,000 to $26,000 a year, just really depending on which state you're in and what the state laws are based on. I can't speak, wow. What the state laws are for minimum wage and that kind of thing. Where did they fall? I bet you we all put them on the bottom. I'm really going to be honest about that one, just because this is an entry-level job that's not very well paid, and most people don't see it as like an honorable profession, right? What about a politician? So I told you a couple different ones. So the senators, the United States senators make an average of $174,000. A governor can range kind of greatly. So the lower end governors, I think like the governor of Puerto Rico only makes $70,000, while Cuomo in New York makes $225,000, right? That's a large scale to look at. Police officers, $26,000 to $88,000. That's again a large variation between your low and high ends, and that's based on experience and again what state you live in, right? And it's interesting to see that they kind of start at the top of like a fast food worker, so they're not paid very well to put their lives in danger, right? What about a soldier? So again, soldiers are going to have a big variance, but in the beginning, when you're just a private P1 or E1 or E2, you're going to be on that lower end, right? 24,000. But just remember that this doesn't include the benefits. So they get housing, they get meals, they get insurance, right? A lot of them don't require transportation, so they don't have to have a car payment or a mortgage, stuff like that. But if you climb the ranks and you stay in and you're a lifer and you do really well and you become like a general or something, they make $150,000, right? So again, large scale variation there. Where did these people fall on your pyramid? So this is one of the higher salaries we see, right? It's up there with politician. Did you put a soldier towards the top? All right, financial advisor. I think most bankers, anything to do with banking, most people assume they make a ton of money. So $88,000 is pretty good. A doctor, I think we can all assume that not only are they financially successful, but they're academically successful, and they're viewed by society as people who are like doing good things, right? A waste collector, 39,000. So that one does have a scale, but when I was Googling, it just depends on what website they pull it from, but that's the average. And they have really good benefits too. A pro athlete, right? Now that's going to be a crazy different salary based on which athlete you are. So Tom Brady versus some no name. Also which sport you play in, that kind of thing, right? So I think that's supposed to be the NBA, not the NBM. $8.32 million is the average. I think that's the highest paid average sport. The MLB, $4 million. The NFL, 3.26. But we know, like, you know, some NFL players make way more than that, right? So that's just the average for them. And then the YouTuber is unknown because it really, you can make literally $3 as a YouTuber in 1 year. But Ryan, that 9-year-old, he might be 10 now, I don't know, but he made $30 million, right? And he's the highest paid. So it's $3 to $5 every 1,000 video views you get. And then you can only start monetizing your YouTube channel, I think, like once you have, I don't know, 1,000 subscribers and like 4,000 watch hours or something crazy, right? So some people make nothing. So what I did this for is just for us to like kind of get an idea of labor structures, both in the classical society, so in Rome or in India, and kind of compare it to what our class structures are in modern times, right? We view class, I think, based, my idea, like what I think kids are going to do, is based off of how much money they make. Where in India, for example, they're not based off of how much money you make. You can be in a lower class and be really wealthy. Theirs is more based off their belief in the value of that job, right? So that's why people who are maybe doing really hard work are in the untouchable class because their work is seen as impure, right? Or their merchants are in a lower class even though they could be incredibly wealthy. And in Rome, similar concept, right? And, you know, some people disagree on, oh, for example, the soldier, right? Like they don't make as much money, especially if you're on that lower end. However, a lot of us really honor our soldiers and have a lot of pride and see them as someone who's doing like an honorable job, right? And so I think it really depends on your society and your culture and your individual beliefs. All right, so we are going to do one source today. This source is actually written by a college student who is getting their master's degree, I think, Manali Deshpande. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. It's the history of the Indian caste system and its impact on India today. So it says, around the 6th century, many individuals of the lower castes who were getting fed up of suppression turned to Buddhism. Buddhism actually began as a reaction to the violence of the Hindu society, including the brutality of the caste system. Buddhism concentrates not on the society but on the individual, thus separating religion from the interest of the ruling and dominance. In Buddhism, one is no longer born into a position due to past injustice. So, right, like in India, you're born into your caste and you have no social mobility. I'm going to just keep reading, sorry. Although Buddhism does see life as pain and suffering and reincarnation as renewal of this suffering, there is a potential escape. The Buddha himself, born into the warrior caste, was a severe critic of the caste system. Buddhism utterly rejects any system of caste, and it actually reached high levels of support during the rule of Ashoka, who we actually read a source from Ashoka. He was the one who encouraged travel and built wells and provided food and shelter and spread Buddhism and like encouraged people to practice Dhamma. So I don't know if you remember that source. We went over that pretty recently. Where was I? He adopted the Buddhist concept of ahimsa, I'm not sure I said that right, or nonviolence and its tendency towards greater equality. He ridiculed the priests who claimed to be superior, criticized the theological basis of the system, and welcomed into his community people of all castes, including outcasts. His most famous saying on the subject was, "Birth does not make one a priest or an outcast. Behavior makes one either a priest or an outcast." So what are your initial observations? What do you see, think, or wonder? What stood out to you? And then when you observe and analyze, explain in 2 sentences why individuals from the lower caste turned to Buddhism. Do not just write the first thing you see though, right? You're going to see a sentence and everyone's going to write that first sentence. Please actually summarize it and explain. And then lastly, last question of the day, what kind of effects do you think the rule of Ashoka would have had based on his beliefs? So how would that have impacted India? That's it. You're going to upload these onto Canvas, and I'm hoping by 5th period, but maybe sooner, I'll have some videos of the activity that y'all had to miss out on. I'm so sorry. But I'll have those up on YouTube. All right, bye.